For most of her life, Nicole Kidman believed there were certain parts of a family's history you learned to tiptoe around shadows you acknowledged only in silence. Wounds you respected by not touching them. Growing up in a household that prized dignity, restraint, and careful emotional boundaries. She learned early that some stories weren't yours to carry into the light, even if they brushed against your life. You protected them by tucking them safely behind closed doors, by smiling gently when questions got too close, by changing the subject with the kind of grace only years of practice can teach. And for decades. Nicole kept that rule as faithfully as she kept any promise to herself. In her world, a world of bright cameras, curated interviews, and carefully edited narratives, privacy wasn't just a preference, it was survival. She had mastered the art of giving enough, hinting at the edges, sharing the polished version of complex truths. She believed love meant guarding the other person's tender places, not exposing them. But at 58, something shifted. Not dramatically, not with some explosive event, but the quiet. Steady kind of shift that comes from years of watching someone you love carry a weight they never asked for. A weight that shaped them, softened them, hardened them, haunted them in ways the public would never see. For the first time. She wondered if keeping silent wasn't protection anymore. If maybe, just maybe, some stories stayed heavy, precisely because no one ever dared tell them. It happened in a studio far quieter than any Nicole Kidman had stepped into in years, the kind of room that made even the air feel softened. The lighting was warm, diffused through pale fabric panels that hung like suspended clouds, casting a gentle glow across her face. No audience, no shuffle of producers, no hum of restless energy. Just the low murmur of a small crew adjusting their equipment and the soft hum of a camera waiting to wake. Nicole eased into the chair opposite the interviewer, smoothing the fabric of her dress as if grounding herself with the familiar motion. The host sat with a clipboard resting loosely on their lap, legs crossed, expression open and patient. A single red light above the camera blinked idly, not yet recording. Just watching, almost expectant. She crossed her legs, exhaled slowly, and let her fingertips skim the cool armrest. Feeling the quiet settle around her, it was the kind of calm that didn't exist in her usual world of premieres and press junkets. An intimacy created not by closeness, but by the absence of everything unnecessary. The interviewer leaned forward slightly, not speaking yet, giving her space a silent permission. A small pause, a breath held. The kind of moment that comes right before a truth begins to form. This was the room, she would later realize, where the story she'd carried for years would finally ask to be spoken. The interviewer flipped to a new page on the clipboard, eyes skimming a line Nicole couldn't see. Their tone shifted almost imperceptibly softer. More personal, the way seasoned interviewers moved when they stepped off the safe, scripted path. Nicole, they began, offering a faint, cautious smile. People admire how gracefully you've navigated your life in the public eye. But I've always wondered, a small pause. A lean forward, a shared breath in the quiet. Have you ever held back something you never spoke about? Not because it was controversial, but because it simply wasn't your story to tell. The question drifted across the space between them like a feathered, gentle, harmless, almost tender. But the moment it landed, something inside Nicole shifted. It was small. So small most people would miss it. Her fingers stopped their easy movement. Her spine straightened just a fraction. Her gaze dropped, then lifted again with a softness that hadn't been there seconds before. She inhaled. Long and controlled, as if steadying herself on an edge she'd been avoiding for years. Yes. She said just one word. Simple. Quiet, but it cracked open the room. The interviewer blinked, sensing the gravity underneath it, the weight of a truth that had finally asked to be acknowledged. Nicole let the silence sit for a moment, as if weighing the shape of what she was about to say. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a careful steadiness, the kind you use when stepping into a memory. you're not sure you're ready to revisit. Asterisk, there's a part of our story. She began slowly that I've never shared. Not with the public, not in interviews, not even with people close to us. Asterisk, she drew in a quiet breath. It's not a scandal, she said, shaking her head gently. It's not betrayal. It's not something explosive or sensational. Her eyes softened. A hint of something unguarded appearing there, but it shaped us, she whispered. More deeply than I realized at the time, it shaped the way we moved through our marriage, the way he loved, the way I tried to understand. She exhaled, her voice lowering. And for years, it wasn't my story to tell. From the outside, those years looked golden photos of red carpets, laughter and interviews, family vacations where sunlight seemed to follow them. To the world, Nicole and Keith were steady, radiant, beautifully intertwined. But inside their home, something quieter had begun to shift. It started in the mornings. She would wake to find Keith already in the kitchen, sitting in the half-light of dawn with a mug of coffee he never touched. He'd stare out the window long enough for the sky to change color, long enough for her to realize he hadn't blinked in a while. His fingers, always restless, would turn his wedding ring slowly. Almost unconsciously, when she asked if everything was all right, his voice was soft, polite, closed off in a way she couldn't quite name. I'm fine. Love, he'd say. But there was a gravity around him then. A heaviness she could feel but couldn't reach. As if he were holding something just out of her sight. It was months later, during one of those long, quiet mornings, when Keith finally let a fragment slip. He didn't look at her when he said it. He just kept tracing the rim of his coffee cup with his thumb, eyes focused somewhere far beyond the kitchen walls. Mom told me something, he murmured, the words barely audible. A pause, his breath catching in a way she almost missed. Something about our family. Nicole didn't press. She knew that tone, the fragile one that meant the ground beneath him was shifting again. She simply sat beside him, waiting. Her presence a quiet invitation rather than a demand. He swallowed hard, jaw tightening as if the memory itself tasted bitter. It was years ago, he said softly. Long before you and I met. But I guess I never realized how much carried it with me. His voice lowered to a whisper. And how much it would change everything. Keith's fingers stilled around the coffee cup, his shoulders lifting with a deep, shaky breath. When he finally spoke, it was with the kind of hesitation that comes from revisiting a truth you've spent most of your life trying not to disturb. She told me. The words caught in his throat. A long pause. His gaze dropped to his hands, as if the memory lived there. I wasn't their first child. Nicole felt the air shift, not in shock, but in the quiet. Heavy recognition of a truth that carried grief inside it. Keith's voice softened, almost childlike in its vulnerability. There was a baby before me, a brother. He died before he ever had a chance to live, and they never talked about him again. Not once. It was like he existed, and then he didn't. He swallowed, eyes glistening but steady. And all this time, he whispered, I thought the silence wasn't mine to question. Keith leaned back in his chair, eyes distant, as if mapping the ways that one hidden truth had carved itself into him. It's strange, he murmured. I know it here. He tapped his forehead lightly that what happened wasn't my fault, that I wasn't meant to replace anyone. His hand moved to his chest. But I don't know it here. He exhaled shakily. I spent my whole life trying not to worry anyone, trying to be perfect, to be good, to be easy. I think part of me was scared that if I slipped, if I struggled, I'd somehow confirm their worst fear that they'd lost the wrong child. His voice softened to a whisper, so I disappeared. Even when I was right in front of them, grief moved us in different directions, Nicole said quietly. Remembering those months when the house felt too big for the two of them, it wasn't dramatic, no slammed doors, no raised voices. Just the subtle, daily shifts that accumulate when two people are hurting in different ways. He slept facing the opposite side of the bed. She lingered in the kitchen a little longer each morning. Conversations grew shorter, smiles more practiced. They were close enough to touch, but somehow always a breath too far. And underneath, it all lived an unspoken fear that his old wound and their new one were slowly teaching them how to lose each other without meaning to. It happened late one night. In the quiet glow of the hallway, where neither of them expected a conversation to begin, Keith walked past her with that same distant look, the one that had become too familiar, and something inside Nicole finally cracked. "Keith," she called softly. He stopped. Didn't turn. She took a breath, hands trembling. "You're not drowning me," she said, her voice breaking. "You're freezing me out." The words hung there, raw and unpolished. He closed his eyes, shoulders collapsing as if the truth itself weighed him down. For the first time in months, he finally turned toward her, not to defend himself, but because he couldn't keep pretending he wasn't sinking. Healing didn't arrive in a single breakthrough. It came in small, almost invisible steps. They started therapy together, sitting side by side on a couch that felt too firm, learning how to name feelings they'd spent years avoiding. Keith practiced saying sentences that ended with, "and I don't know why." Nicole practiced waiting, listening without filling the silence. Some days were heavy, some were tender. They took evening walks again, slow ones where their hands would brush before finally, deliberately intertwining. Bit by bit, they relearned how to reach for each other. Not perfectly, but genuinely. Looking back, Nicole realized the secret wasn't just about loss. It was about inheritance. Not the kind passed down in wills, but the quiet kind that lives in the spaces families never speak of. She reached across the years of their journey and understood something she wished someone had told him long ago. "You are not the unfinished story of the people who came before you," she said gently. "You're allowed to live your life without carrying the weight of theirs, because the truth is universal. We all inherit silence. We all outgrow it in our own time, and healing begins the moment we choose to speak." Later that night, Keith sat quietly on the couch, the television casting a soft glow across the room. Nicole's voice filled the space, calm, measured, honest, telling their story. The one they had carried together but rarely spoken aloud. He watched her, heart tightening, not from shock, but from recognition. Every pause, every whispered truth, was a mirror of their journey. He reached for the remote, paused it, and smiled faintly. A small gesture, a nod to understanding, to the quiet work of loving again. In that gentle silence, the weight lifted just enough for both of them to breathe. A story shared, a story owned. Finally at peace. Hope so you enjoy this story kindly. Subscribe to our channel, celebrate data.